a bête noire, a kind of an enemy, someone who's, or some discipline or some kind of formation, intellectual formation, that is depressing the sense of smell, belittling it, disparaging it in some way. And in each of our presentations, there's a certain amount of advocacy going on in one form or another. And I'm wondering, and I feel this in my own work, especially, less so now than 15 years ago when I first started. But I'm wondering if it's not too presumptuous of me to ask this of the other panelists, perhaps to discuss, how we can proceed with our research in a climate that is sometimes hostile or unresponsive, and maybe, what are some strategies for dealing with that other than just taking them on and criticizing, but maybe being more constructive about it?
Since I have so little to say, I will go next. Mostly, I want to say, since we're at the end, pick up on what Barry said at the beginning. Thank you to Marta for such an imaginative assemblage, because it made me so glad you asked me to go first, because I would have been embarrassed had I come last to discover how much I don't know from all of these people. And I've learned something very important and very different from each one. So that's what I had to say.
Well, I would just reiterate, both points actually, because I had both thoughts in my head. That first, that I think what's striking is that smells are still really quite relegated in terms of the senses. And we've each found that, and there has been this kind of advocacy, but also the contribution of different disciplines and different ways of approaching the topic has been really helpful for me. I suppose just an observation coming from the point of view of the presentation I gave is that it does still seem to me there's a lot of emphasis on the more pleasant smells. Not exclusively, certainly in the various presentations, but I don't know if that is just an orientation, a kind of hedonic orientation, but it's just worth observing, I think, again.
Okay, first, thanks, Marta. I think for me it was something really exciting to hear. I can tell you that at the beginning, just to be in a meeting with philosophers, psychologists, is something very rare, no? And then I thought, okay, I will talk about the brain and they will talk about the mind, no? But now I think that we are all together. And then I can talk about neurophilosophy, maybe, neuropsychology. I think that we can put all together. And even with the smell, no, with the olfaction, it's a subject really interesting for all of us. In neuroscience, we have many groups working on different areas in the olfaction, but I didn't realize about how many other fields can be opened to that. So I'm really happy about that. I learned a lot. I was really embarrassing about the discussion, no? Because at the beginning it was like, okay, I can talk about something that is not a result, it's not something that I can touch, no? I can talk about a circuit or a synapses or neuron, no? But I think that I learned a lot from all of you, and thank you for inviting me.
I guess one thing that I've been thinking about is that so everyone here has, in a way, tried to resurrect olfaction from its critics and to show how fundamentally important it is in our sensory engagement with the world. And I guess I've been thinking about how that relates to aesthetic value and how it might turn out, especially given the issue of congruence that Barry talked about. It just got me thinking that perhaps if we find out that olfaction really is as fundamental as some of the suggestions have urged, then it could be that there are very interesting connections with aesthetic value that will also show that things like basic taste preferences, basic issues of congruence, manifested subpersonally or personally, might play a very fundamental role in our engagement with the world. And so therefore it might also be a way of resurrecting aesthetic value and putting it back in a very central place in cognition generally. That's very speculative, but...
I suppose my point I'd really like to talk about is when I first started my PhD, I was given the option of choosing any topic that fell within the idea of 24-hour cities. So, you know, how did I come to smell, to learn about smell and to focus on that? And the reason was a complete chance, but I was located with acousticians, and they were doing lots of interesting work around soundscapes and developing some really interesting things there about how to design with sound and make places more enjoyable and explore those associations. And the more I learnt about that, the more I became fascinated about other senses and the sense of smell. And I did wrestle with, shall I focus on relationships between smell and sound? But clearly the literature wasn't there, and there was a real gap for some new knowledge. And so for all of us within our different perspectives are exploring smell specifically, but I think it's very useful to think about how we can then make connections with other disciplines and other knowledge that exists, and how we can start bringing that together, because there's certainly, I'm aware, within soundscape studies, lots of work that then, you know, I can start thinking, yeah, well, that now relates to smell as well, and how do they relate? How are they different? How does this differ to taste experiences when you're thinking about the city? Or so really it was to think about that as well as all working together, because we have this kind of cross-cutting interest between us, it's also then how we appeal to our own disciplines and try and make those connections as well.
I thought that was a really good start and a very good question, was the idea of the advocacy and so on. It's not just the advocacy in sort of intellectual disciplines. It's also the fact that the medics don't take it very seriously when people lose their sense of smell or have no sense of smell. And I think that's going to change, and I think in some quite important way, the fact that there are these interesting, intellectually fascinating issues that you've all been wrestling with and we've all been cross-cutting on is a way in which you're now beginning to see a topic which needs people from lots of different disciplines to kind of address it and to learn the different levels of description of the phenomena, the different methods, not to kind of blur the boundaries, but to say we need everybody, and we need, you know, good people who are very bringing something that's very importantly kind of founded in their area and their discipline for us to understand how big a topic it is and how many people we'll need to address and solve it. And I think when it gets that kind of salience and presence, then the medics will start to listen, and then you'll have done something very important for all the people who've been unjustly neglected for so long.